You're tuned in to Chromebooks Today, the podcast where Chromebook news and views collide. If you need the show notes or just want to say hi, visit us at chromebooks.today.
Hello, and welcome to Chromebooks Today. My name's Craig Tumbleson, and joining me today is James Welbus and John Oliphant. James, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, Craig. How are you?
I'm doing good, James. John, how are you doing?
Excellent, sir. Glad to be here.
Good, good. This episode of Chromebooks Today is called Release and Revise, and it's titled that way because we have a few things to talk about, mostly releases and some revisions. To start us off, the first thing we're going to jump right into is a brand new community, a brand new unofficial community called Chrome OS Testing. Now, some of our listeners tend to be a little Chrome OS savvy. They like the platform. They want to make it better for everyone else. Some of our listeners will also know that there's a few different release channels. By default, everyone that owns a Chromebook is running the stable channel. This is official software provided by Google, and it's designed to be, well, stable. But there's also pre-release channels. There's a beta channel, a developer channel, and even a canary channel. All of these channels contain software that isn't quite ready yet for the general public, but it's on its way. The Chrome OS testing community is a project by the top contributors over on the official support forum to help prevent bugs that show up in those other pre-release channels from making it to the stable channel and affecting the general population. This is something I'm actively involved in. I'm really excited for it because as of right now, when an issue comes up in a beta or dev channel, there isn't really a good place to put it. And I think James has had some first-hand experience with this. Now, James, you run the beta channel day to day, is that right?
Yeah, my Chromebox and my Chromebook.
Okay, so you're double dipping there, both devices.
I am.
Okay, so what happens when you run into a major issue with the beta channel?
Well, after the basic troubleshooting and whatnot to make sure that there's not a simple fix, a bad extension or something, most people take to Google, and if you're lucky, a Google search will take you to the official Google Chromebook forum, where you may get lucky. Some of the people there, the top contributors, kind of have they can escalate things to Googlers, and sometimes things get fixed that way, but honestly, it's probably not the best method of reporting things because there's so many things in that forum that sometimes things slip through the cracks. You can also try to find a bug that maybe is being tracked already, and that even just saying that sounds too technical for most people. I've never done it. I hear other people doing it all the time. So that can be a way of reporting an issue, but like you said, there really isn't a whole lot of good ways to do it. It wasn't just me. A lot of people were having an issue with zip files in the beta channel where you couldn't open them. Is quite annoying to not be able to open a zip file. And honestly, I didn't know. I didn't even know that what to do with that. I went to the product forum and said, "Hey, I'm having this issue." A few other people said we are too, and but I didn't know what to do to actually spark a solution.
That is a perfect example of the problem we're currently facing. Like you mentioned, the official product forum is mostly focused on helping people that are running the stable channel. So issues that are showing up in pre-release channels may not get the same level of attention as issues that show up in the stable channel. So this community is created in direct response to issues like the one James faced. People that run the beta, dev, or even canary channels that spot issues and they don't know what the next step is. This community is set up by top contributors. James can stop by, make a post, say, "Hey, I think I found an issue. Is anyone else experiencing this?" Top contributors will guide that discussion, verify issues, and once an issue has been verified, make sure the right people hear about it so that it can get fixed. And speaking of updates in general, launching today, and we're recording on Tuesday night, so it'll be live Wednesday morning. John, what new major Milestone version is rolling out right now?
41, Craig. 41 is the new one.
41 is the new one. And what channel is this rolling out to, John?
Stable.
Perfect. It's no longer on beta, but it's been on beta for about 6 weeks. So bugs that were spotted, maybe they've been fixed, maybe they haven't. John, what do we know about this update so far?
So this update does come with a number of improvements, like Wi-Fi stability, and other stableness things like security patches, things like that. The most important piece, and the one that I'm excited about, Greg, is the remote desktop capability. Now, this is a remote assistance, not like where you can just kind of remote into your own Chromebook or Chromebox. It is an assistance, so you do have to have a PIN. Someone has to be available at the machine that you wish to remote into. But I think that this is a huge one. My nephews just received Chromebooks from their school. I don't know if I'd be able to remote in or not. But I also have a friend of mine. He got his daughter a Chromebook. And I know that if there's ever a chance that I could remote in and assist them with that, I think that this is a big one. I think that 41 really puts us in the vein of other machines out there that this capability, I think, is important. They've had it for Androids and things like that for a while, so I'm excited about about 41.
I completely agree, John, and I also agree with the point that you pointed out, which was that using this feature, Chromebooks are not added to your My Computer section of the Chrome Remote Desktop app, so you do need someone sitting in front of it to type in that PIN number. So it's kind of a half-baked feature compared to what we have available for us on Windows at the moment, but it's a sign of things to come, in my opinion. I'm really excited about that, too. And then the other major fix that Milestone 41 is going to bring us are some Wi-Fi fixes. Google heard that quite a few people had Wi-Fi issues on Milestone 40, and they are proud to say that most, if not all of those, should be resolved with this new update. Now, when Google's not currently rolling out brand new versions for the stable channels, sometimes they're testing stuff behind the scenes. James, are they testing anything new?
Are they testing anything new? My guess, Craig, is that of course they are. Right now, what they're testing is something called Answers. Answers in Omnibox, which is kind of cool. Whenever you do a Google search, you search for something, it will pop up possible things that you might be trying to search for. But what they're testing is when you search for something in the Omnibox, you might actually get the answer to your question right there in the Omnibox. And the Omnibox is the URL bar, address bar.
Right. So what's an example of a question that might be answered for us, James, if we were to just type it in?
One thing I've been doing, I've been using that Tinkercad program it's a CAD program that works on my Chromebook, and the thing works with millimeters. And so if I'm trying to do something that's in inches, I go to the old Google and I say, how many millimeters is 4.3 inches? That's something that easily could show up in my Omnibar for me if I started to search for that.
Okay, so it's similar to kind of the Google Now voice answers that it can read back to you. Simple maths, maybe some general information. Does it bring up the answer 42 when you ask it, what's the answer to the universe?
If it doesn't, I might have to switch to the Apple ecosystem because that would be a huge fail on Google's part.
I think that would be justified, James. I would not fight you on that. John, when Google's not testing weird, quirky things, it's always fun to go through some general tips on how to use Chrome better. Do you have any tips for us?
On how to use Chrome better?
Yeah.
In what way? How can we use Chrome better?
Well, I don't know. Maybe getting around Chrome a little faster. I mean, for example, let's say you've got a few thousand bookmarks and you want to just get through them and drill down really quickly.
Craig, I can. Sorry about that. I was. You're segue. I apologize. So.
We're still learning, guys. For any listeners out there, we're still learning. This is the first episode. There's going to be some chuckles. There's going to be some mishaps. We'll figure it out eventually. We promise.
That's what happens when you put a suit on a warthog. It just happens. Anyway, so Craig, you're absolutely right. There are some really good tidbits out there. What I wanted to talk about was Dinson over at ChromeStory.com. He ended up having an article. It was a tip article about being able to search your bookmarks easily from the Omnibar, which is what James recently just spoke about just a second ago, where if you do have tons of bookmarks, which I do. I'm a crazy bookmarker. I just throw whatever I want in there at any time, and I kind of pick a folder at random. But if you wanted to search in the bookmarks, you can actually add it as a search engine, so that way you can just simply type in you type in book and hit tab, and then all of a sudden now you're just searching directly in your bookmarks. So it's a very interesting feature to be able to add these type of search engines. You can even do it in Google Docs, things like that. So it's actually a really great tip that people, I think, if you do have a million bookmarks like I do, definitely check it out.
Sounds great, John. Thanks for the tip. Well, thanks, Denson, I guess. Speaking of Denson, he has kind of a wild rant/theory up on Chrome Story right now. For those of you that kind of follow the Google ecosystem, you may have heard that a Google executive kind of announced recently that Google is interested in becoming a cell phone service. And they would do this through a virtual provider. They would piggyback off other networks, so they're not actively looking at building their own network. But Denson raises a very interesting point. When we saw the original Pixel, it came bundled with an LTE modem. It was an option. And with it, you could get 4G connection wherever you go, regardless of whether Wi-Fi was present or not. And with rumors of a new Pixel 2.0 coming up, Denson wonders maybe the Pixel 2.0 will use the new Google cellular service for its LTE modem. He says, is this even possible? He said he was discussing with a friend, and they just kind of brought it up as a point, and we're curious. So this is not a rumor. I want to be clear. This isn't even to the rumor stage. This is just an idea being thrown out. But I think it's interesting to think about. We know that Google likes to kind of position the reference devices as premium, expensive, kind of out of this world, and it would make sense to tie it into a Google cellular service. So I was just curious, James, do you think this is something that might be beneficial, or do you think it would be smarter to go with an unlocked LTE modem that could switch between any carrier, or do you think focusing on a Google carrier would be more ideal?
Well, it depends on a few things. One, it depends on how good is this Google network. How good is the coverage of this Google network? If I get a Chromebook that only works on one mobile network, and that mobile network only works in 8 cities in the country, my guess is that Cedar Rapids, Iowa probably isn't going to be in the top 8 list. We're usually down a little bit further on that list, being a town no one's ever heard of and a state no one's ever been to. So if they're not, I would say if Google's mobile network is not already as abundant as Verizon's 4G network, then I don't want it. Anything less than that, I probably won't be super interested in. So going open and making it, like you said, where you could maybe possibly use multiple, your choice of carrier would be the best option. I don't know how hard that would be to implement, so I won't try to guess on that. But obviously, I think that would be the best for everybody, is if I could choose what network I want to use, then great. If Google happens to be one of those networks I can choose, awesome. If it's available to me, I'm a fanboy. I'd definitely try it.
Okay. I think on the technical level, it's probably possible. LTE is a little more open than CDMA was, and we know from the Samsung Series 550 that included a cellular modem, it came with Verizon kind of pre-configured, but you could switch it to unlocked and use T-Mobile or AT&T GSM as well. John, do you have any strong opinions on this?
Well, I would just like to know what initially their piggyback's going to be. Are they going to piggyback off of someone else's service? I forget what they call this. Like Cricket and Ting, and those other ones. They actually piggyback off of a major carrier, and then that other company just pays a subsidy to them, because they're basically using their infrastructure. I think that's what Google was thinking about doing. That's from what I understood, but I could be completely wrong. But because you look at Virgin's also one of those piggyback carriers. So to James's point, maybe right off the bat, Google does piggyback off of Verizon, so you'd have that really great service, right off the jump, and you'd have a Google product. Now, should it be an open type thing? I mean, everybody wants it, but you never know with something like this. I mean, they could just lock it down to be one carrier, and that piggyback service, and just call it Google. But it is an exciting thought. I'll put it that way. I think I think Dinson has something going there. I think it could be a possibility.
Interesting. And I'm a little curious to see, we know the Pixel isn't designed to be sold as a mass production unit, so I wonder if that might factor into it too, whereas you could essentially use it if it's going to be a developer device anyway, maybe gear it toward testing their new network, see where coverage is spotty, stuff like that. It's an interesting thought, so kudos to Dinson for coming up with it and sharing it with us. John, do you want to hit the next item? I will leave the full lead-in to you, however you want to spin it.
However, I want to spin the fact that MediaTek has a new chip. Is that what you want me to just to spin?
You have full editorial control, John.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Well, basically, MediaTek does have a brand new high-performance chip available, and it already supports Chrome OS. So it's a new chip.
Define high performance for me.
It's fast. It is an ARM chip, so I mean that's gonna be one of those pieces where everyone goes, do I really want to do that? I mean, I recently recommended someone not buy an ARM chip, so I don't know. This does have 8 cores in it, so I mean that these are things like that when you start adding cores, that's where we're at, right? It's not necessarily going to be with the speed of the chip anymore. It's going to be how many cores you have, hyper-threading, things like that. So they say that they've got 4K video streaming out, 30 frames per second, things like that. It's just something that we're going to have to see what it does. Right now, that the news of this came out last year, things like that. So it's slowly coming, right? So it's just another ARM chip available, and that's what's going on now. Joey over at MG Chrome, I don't think he has any. When I read the article, he doesn't have any. No one knows when or where or how, but it is an ARM chip that's coming down the line.
Sounds good. And just to add to your point, or just to confirm, there are no plans that we know of to put this chip into a Chromebook, right? This was just more of a proof of concept?
From what I can tell, yeah. I think it's just I mean, it's development in ARM chips, which we want to see, right? We want Intel and AMD to have a competitor, and we want something low cost. We want something low powered. I mean, we want it all, and the ARM actually does come with all those pieces. That's missing the one piece, which is performance. So to see a company like MediaTek constantly innovating, along with Samsung and others, and NVIDIA, constantly, iterating newer and better and faster, and keeping the cost down, there's nothing better than that. So the fact that this company's, going whole hog and making these chips, I think it's fantastic because as long as they're going to be able to sell them and keep going. And I mean, I think ARM has a place. I just don't know if we actually have seen it yet. I know that we've solved a lot of the problems around ARM, but I just don't know if we've seen full adoption. AMD's actually walked away from the Chromebook plate. Totally. I don't know why, but so
they hate money.
That's right. It's now an ARM and an Intel race, and with these companies, ARM's going to keep on updating the infrastructure, right? And then MediaTek, NVIDIA, and Samsung and others are going to keep on attaching better and better boards together, and creating a better system. So system on a chip. So it's really good news. But ARM is still a question mark. There's just a big question mark. It's just always there will be for a while. In the mobile market, no, but for a desktop or a laptop machine,
Yeah, and the other big one is embedded. And we haven't seen a lot of dedicated Chrome kiosks yet, but I still think that's a market that we may see ARM take charge of moving forward. Patreon's going to give them a run.
I love the kiosks.
I do. I think it's the remote management. It's to just drop them off and set up the whole convention with them. I love that concept, and I don't think that's something that is focused on a lot, but I think it has massive practical applications there. But I guess we'll kind of just see, like you said, it's going to be an arms race, and maybe ARMS has the most arms, and maybe ARMS won't.
Classic.
Classic. Yes. Speaking of classic, let's move on to a life lesson, and the two of you should appreciate this. Sometimes bugs fix themselves. Yes. Given enough time, sometimes bugs will fix themselves, and this is not artificial intelligence. This is just user feedback. As we all know, when the new Google Drive user interface launched to the Material Design-ish look it is now, they changed the phrasing from "shared with me" to "incoming," and the Files app did not change. It was still "shared with me." Now, a bug ticket was filed back in October 2014 that said that they should update the phrasing in the Files app to "incoming" to match the Google Drive interface. And they didn't. It kind of flew a little bit under the radar. But yesterday, the Google Drive team announced that they would be changing it back. So it's no longer going to be "incoming," and now it's going to be "shared with me." So this bug ticket was just closed out with the... an exact quote is, "Looks like this can be closed as the web UI just made the backward roll to the old "shared with me, so we're consistent again this way." And the follow-up comment of "Go team." Little humor, but sometimes bugs fix themselves, given enough time. So I just wanted to point that out because that's the little interesting things that kind of give life to the open source project that we've come to know and love. Speaking of the open source project that we've come to know and love, John, you have some interesting thoughts for our main topic section that revolve around just how much Google allows their open source projects and their advertising business to kind of intertwine or be separated. And I want you to kind of bring us into this and explain to our listeners what's going on, what your concerns are, and what questions you want to raise.
Well, thank you, Frank. What I want to talk about is if you're a reader of blogs and other media on the web, you might know of the ability to remove all of the stuff on the outside and just give me the article and the images, and I'm going to read that, and that's all I have, right? So there's a number of extensions out there that are available, like Read Later, or you can send it to something like Pocket or other ones. And that gives you the ability to take something like what you see in a newspaper, and then you get rid of all those other articles, all the other fluff, advertising, and you just have that article, and that's all you have. That's all you're reading. You can increase the size of the font, things like that. Chrome does not have a dedicated extension, right, or a native extension inside of it that allows people to go to what I call it reader mode, right? And most other browsers do. Safari has it. Firefox has it, and I actually shamelessly plug Firefox for that fact, because on mobile, if there's a large article that I want to read, I actually can take it to Firefox and then put it in reader mode and read it, because you have the ability again to change the font size, because I'm old, and at night you can do sepia, or you can do the dark background with white letters, things like that, right? So what's really cool though is, of course, this Chrome is 99% open source and a community project. So there's been some development on they call it the DOM distiller, and that's I think it's a document object model distiller, which means that it goes in and it looks for the article and it produces it for you. So it's distilling the DOM. Again, I just call it reader mode. And this was actually released by Francois before. It's letting us know kind of what was going on with that it was there, that it was available. Now, it's not available on Chromebook, so I know that this is Chromebooks.today, but for everybody else with Chrome, you can actually flip a flag, and you can even flip a flag in mobile and give yourself this ability to use this. And I'm going to quote Francois here just to kind of to lay this down, because Francois, and I don't mean to do this to Google or Francois, but I kind of want to point at something really quickly, and this my whole reason for this, because I love Reader Mode. I love Reader Mode. Love the extensions that are available out there, and I have to use Reader Mode on mobile. I have to use it on Firefox. So, to quote Francois, the DOM Distiller is an exciting open source project created by the Chromium team whose goal is to provide a better reading experience by distilling the content of the page. And then he goes on to say, yes, we're talking about Reader Mode here, a mobile-friendly viewing mode for Chrome mobile, but not only. So the problem with this is that Google makes a great deal of money on its ads, right? So when you look at someone's blog, you take some of the ones we've mentioned today, OMG Chrome and Chrome Story. You go to other blogger sites out there, or you go to WordPress sites. You go to anybody's. I go to like Krebs Security. You name them. They pay for what they do by selling advertisements, and Google's a huge seller of the ads on those pages. So my questions are to the group, and Craig, is does Google even want this? Like their browser, again, is a community built, mostly 98% of it's community built, ready to go, free and open, but it is a Google product, and Google makes money off of advertising. So with this distiller mode, or this DOM distiller, the blog article ads are completely removed. When you're like, ooh, I want to read that, boop, you hit a little button, all the ads are gone. So where does Google stand on their own browser having a native feature that removes their ads? So Craig, I'll throw it back to you and just ask you that question. I mean, I know that. Well, I'll just let you. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's an interesting point, and I'm glad that you brought it up as one of our main topics. There is kind of a careful balance there. Google is first and foremost an ad company, and all of its other products have to complement that in one way or another, whether it's collecting data to serve more targeted ads or just serving more ads in general, but they have to complement each other. And this is one of those cases where they certainly don't. What I'm curious about is how many people are actually going to use this, and are people going to use it for their entire browsing experience, or only when they see an article that is long form that they want to sit down and spend time consuming? And those questions are relevant, in my opinion, because first of all, the number of people that use it is going to have a direct effect on the number of ads that it ends up stopping. But second of all, the number of times it's actually used is also very important. If Google finds that people are mostly using it to distill content when it's a long article that you're going to invest 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes in, a lot of those long-form articles don't have ads anyway because they unfairly break up the content. And if you go to some sites that specialize in longer articles, you'll see that. The ads are on the top or at the very bottom, but they try not to place them during the article so that you're not interrupted or taken away from their story they're trying to tell. I also think that we've seen this work successfully on other platforms, like John said, Safari, Firefox. There are dedicated apps like Instapaper, which I personally love. And I'm not sure that really has broken the advertising model yet. So I think the concerns are legitimate. I think it's a discussion worth having. But I'm happy to say, I'm happy that Google isn't just putting their foot down and saying, no, we're not even going to let it, we're not even going to let it see the light of day. I'm thrilled that they're taking a little more thoughtful approach and saying, well, let's put it behind a flag, let's see how people are going to use it, and then we'll go from there. If our ads drop completely, then we'll need to figure something out, but for now, there's no harm in letting it happen. So I kudos to Google for kind of letting that path go the direction it's going to go. James, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, my first thought was that yeah, this has already been done. Firefox, and I know a friend of mine, Chris, was talking about he switched from iPhone to Android, and one of the biggest issues he had with that was the fact that the iPhone had a reader mode. I forget what they call it, where you push a button and all the ads and everything goes away, and you're just presented with the article. And he really missed that feature. I wonder if I don't think Google wants to be the only one who doesn't provide that. I don't think Google wants John Oliphant to use Firefox instead of Chrome because Firefox has a reader mode on it. And I don't think he wants people to not switch from iPhones to Android phones because of the reader mode. So at first it seems like Google would be against this because they make so much money on ads. But on the other hand, they also try to be the company, they try to at least appear to be the company that's open and inclusive. And I don't think they ever want to be that one company that's not giving everybody what they want.
I definitely follow your logic there. They don't want to shoot themselves in the foot by not staying up to date with their competitors, but at the same time, they need to respect the core purpose of their business, which is still in advertising. So, like John said, I think it's a careful balance, and at the end of the day, they really need to complement each other. John, I'm going to pass it back to you for any final thoughts you might have.
I guess my final thought is, Google Chrome is an interesting beast, right? Because I think that it's the second, well, not even the second, it's probably the fifth of many open source browsers, that are out there trying to beat and get away from Internet Explorer, which Internet Explorer, I run into issues with it like literally daily. So the fact that there are these other options, I don't think that Google or the team necessarily would be sad that I would go to Mozilla. I just wanted to bring this up. I do think that they want you to have the best experience possible. And I think what the Chromium team and Google is trying to do is they're trying to bring that best possible experience to you in their browser. And not because Chrome itself doesn't deliver all the Google goodness, right? I mean, it does, but you can change your search engine. So, and that's pretty much the whole point of it, right? But so I think that from an experience perspective, I think that Google should do this because I think that, as always, they're always innovating in other areas and they're always trying to find other ways to make money. So as much as advertising is always might be king in their revenue stream, I think that this will be a smaller part to say that people are constantly hitting the button. And this also still needs a lot of work, to be honest. It works, but it has a long way to go. I mean, like a long way to go compared to the other ones. It's kind of silly, actually, how far behind it is. Because there's probably only one developer who was like, you know what, I'm going to do this for the Chromium project, and I'm going to do it all myself, and I'm just going to keep poking at it. Because that's what it feels like, and I don't mean to belittle it, but it's just it is what it is. So that would be my final thoughts, Craig.
Okay, it's kind of a release and revise approach, would you say?
Well, because it's behind flags, this gives someone like myself the ability to be like not only flags but switches. So to be able to do this on Chrome on a computer, a Mac, Linux, or Windows machine, again, you can't do it on Chrome OS yet. You have to put a switch, which means that you have to actually start Chrome with a flag when you start it. So this is not something that many people are familiar with, but to start, like for instance, to start Excel in safe mode, because Excel, sometimes has a bad something or other, you have to go to your command line prompt in Windows and type in start excel.exe space -safe, right? Well, that's a switch. That's so when you want to fire this off and you want to use the distiller on a computer, you actually have to fire off Chrome. And most people's Chrome, they have background processes So you have to actually kill all the versions of Chrome that are running, which is, so if you're running apps or anything like that, you have to kill all that. So it's not easy to get to. There's a flag, I think, for mobile, but and that's pretty straightforward. It's just a regular flag, but it's hard to get to. It's not as easy as with the desktops, and it doesn't work for all sites. So, and I mean, even sites that it definitely should work for, it does not work for. So, I mean, I think like literally they're like, this doesn't break anything else. It's a standalone piece. Yeah, just put it in stable, no problem. So, I think this is it's just such a small little piece that doesn't affect anything that I think they're more than willing to like put it in stable till the dawn of time.
Interesting. And I also found it interesting that you mentioned earlier how many other open source projects there are, and a few of them are actually based on Chromium, right?
There are a few.
One of them being Opera, which is one of the more popular Chromium-based browsers at this point. There's a few others. I think the Russian search engine has one now, Yandex. Is that Yandex? They have a Chromium-based browser. So at this stage, I'm going to throw it to James. Is Chromium a Google project, or is it more of a community-driven project?
Well, I think it's both. I think your question is in which direction does it lean? I'm not. Chromium, I'm thinking is probably mostly a community project, and I think Google's got a really good thing going there where they can pretty much just whenever they want to pop in, grab Chromium, tweak a couple things to make it exactly the way they want, and they have Chrome. That being said, I don't think that's how they approach it. I don't think they're that lazy about Chrome. But it does feel like it is mostly a community project that Google largely benefits from, and then we as users of Chrome obviously also benefit from.
Okay, and I bring it up because John made the comment about how this feels almost as if a single developer took an interest and decided to bring it to Chromium. So, John, what's your take on this? Do you think that Chromium is moving toward a more open source general community approach, or do you think that because Google ultimately decides which commits are accepted and which aren't, that Google will always maintain an authoritative sense of control over the Chromium project?
I think that Google, first of all, I do believe that Google, as much as it's a community project and they have Google does pay a lot of the engineers. And there are full-time people that are paid. They're on that community, but I believe that they are actual Google employees, right? But you're allowed to put code in. And I don't know who this developer is. I wish there was like an about page for it. But I think that Google wants Chromium because it is an experience. It's not necessarily a sales tool for Google. I mean, of course, it is in itself, but it's also this really great open source project that does give you like a great experience for the web. Like that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to kick the web's butt with this browser that allows you to do Web 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, moving forward. Everything that you want that you can experience in the web. Google wants to do it first. And they want their team to have all of the capability and resources to get it done. And I think that using a community approach, I think it's the best approach to use for something like this. I can't tell you how bad IE is. It really is terrible. And so, but to have Firefox and the Mozilla organization, and then you have the Chromium team, I think it's more of an experience thing. It's like, let's get the web what it's supposed to be. I mean, look in the U.S., we've had this huge debate about the net neutrality. I mean, the internet is supposed to be this big community of people that can talk and move freely. So to have Google being a main cheerleader and supporter financially for the Chromium team, I think it can only benefit everybody, the community, and then everybody who wants to use the web and use Chrome. And one caveat to that is that Chromium OS has another. You talked about other open source project using it. Core OS is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's based on Chromium, and I think that's also pretty powerful to say that a lot of the servers out there are going towards that model of of using CoreOS and its what do you call it? No, I can't think of the term. But I'll let it go to that. Just CoreOS is another great open source project that uses the Chromium base.
Containers?
Yes, thank you, Craig. Containers.
Perfect.
Okay,
Perfect.
Thank you.
I thought so, but I'm not as familiar with CoreOS as you are. So, all right. I think we're going to wrap up the show there. We just hit 40 minutes. Listeners that transitioned over from Practical Chrome will think that we pulled off some sort of miracle. And we did. We are miracle workers, but we try to stay humble most of the time. John, James, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I've been Craig Templeson, and I think with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show. Until next week, Chrome you later.
And everybody, check out Chromebooks.today for the show notes if you want to check out any of the links.
Yes. Check out Chromebooks.today for the show notes. We are on YouTube. We've had a few requests to be submitted to a few new podcast apps. We are working on that. If your podcast app doesn't currently have the show, you can add our RSS feed manually, and you can also let us know which app you use, and we'll do our best to track down their directory and submit to it. Anything else?
I'm good.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Bye.
Later, Chromies.